Great. Okay. Excellent. I'll be able to do that.
Well, what do you think? Should we get started?
I think so. I think people are just about in here, so we'll get going. I want to welcome everybody to this very exciting opportunity we have today. Sean Jordanson from the CCC Accessibility Center is here with us to lead us through a series, a three-part series on word accessibility training. And we've opened this up to the entire district, so that's a pretty fun thing. We don't get to do a lot of cross-district work, so we welcome you all here. And Sean is an accessibility and alternate media specialist who has a lot of experience in a number of community colleges in the system. So we welcome you today, Sean. And as you may have heard, as we're doing a little work at the beginning here, I'll be recording. So we will try to make these recordings available to you as soon as Monday, and I'll send them out over email. So thank you, Sean.
Perfect. Thank you for that introduction. And I will go ahead and get started here. Oh, that's backwards. One moment. All right, let's see if we can get this correct. Okay, I just want to verify. Can you see my presentation? My home slide, perfect. Okay, hello everyone. Nice to virtually meet all of you. I haven't done a presentation in a couple weeks, so I may be a little rusty here, so bear with me. Today we're going to be learning about Microsoft Word accessibility principles. We have chunked the content into very specific areas, and the goal here is to improve your foundational skills in accessibility. I am from the CCC Accessibility Center. It is a grant that is funded under what's called the Shared Infrastructure Program from the Chancellor's Office. It's located at the Technology Center at Butte College, and we focus on web, IT accessibility, alternate media, and assistive technology. For today's session, I may mute you, but if you have something to say that's of value, you have a question, anything like that, please, you are welcome to unmute yourself and ask me at any point. I love interruptions, just valid ones. So if your mic is just on in the background, we often will hear any static or talking or animals. So I may mute you if that happens. Additionally, I will do my best to monitor the chat, but I will ask Betsy, Candice, and Mariana to please also review the chat, and you have full permission to interrupt me if there's a question. Just so you're aware, also, I think we need to record before we get too far in.
We are recording.
We are.
Yes,
okay.
We are. Yes, I have. Yeah, I can see
it. Normally, I do the button, so I was like, wait, I didn't push it. I have two monitors going simultaneously here in presenter view and a PowerPoint, so it's tricky for me to sometimes see the actual questions. That's why you guys can interrupt me. I may ask you some questions throughout the training over the next few sessions. I encourage you to use the Zoom icons found within Zoom. You do not have to use them. You can use the chat as well or unmute yourself to participate. Betsy did a great job at introducing me. I have spent a lot of time in the community college system. I was an alt media specialist at Columbia College up near Yosemite, a little closer to where you guys are than where I'm at now. Most recently, I was at Santa Monica College teaching students with disabilities as a full-time faculty member. And now my current position is giving guidance and support at the Chancellor's Office level here through the Accessibility Center. And so I have the world's longest business cards. Basically, I have a super long title, but basically what it boils down to is alternate media and assistive technology. So who of you creates PDFs? Go ahead in the chat or use the Zoom icons to give me a thumbs up or a wave. Who of you creates PDFs? I see couple people. Perfect, excellent. Well, this training is going to be great for you because accessible PDFs typically start from MS Word documents. Now, there's a million ways we can get a PDF document, but if possible, it's always best to start in Word. We have more formatting options for accessibility within Word, and the more heavy lifting we can do there, the easier the PDF accessibility will become down the line. Now, on our third session of this training, in a couple weeks, we will go over briefly how to create an accessible PDF, and we will talk about creating accessible flyers. But the first two sessions here are really dedicated towards the principles of Microsoft Word accessibility. Sorry, I am stuck. There we go. So where do we start? Well, it's important to understand why we do what we do. So essentially, any formatting that we apply to our documents affects our students. And so when we mark content as a paragraph or as a heading or as a list, these elements are communicated to assistive technology and those that rely on screen readers or other forms of technology. On the right-hand side of my screen, we have some markup highlighted in yellow. Now, this is simply a way to communicate the information. This is actually HTML, where the words are wrapped in specific code. Now, this doesn't really mean anything other than this is what is transferred to the assistive tech. So if we don't have our content in a heading or a paragraph or a list, a user using technology will not know that. And so if you were to give them a 100-page document with no formatting, they will not be able to navigate to the page that they need to get to. Accessibility equals usability. Basically, it's important for your students to be able to navigate through the course material. Can they access all the information they need in order to pass your class? So someone thought of this great acronym that encapsulates a lot of the accessibility principles, and it's called LIST. And we're going to go through what that means. Basically, if you can remember what LIST stands for, it's going to be easier for you down the line to maintain these accessibility principles. Oftentimes, people feel overwhelmed by accessibility, but really there's only a handful of items, and Word makes it pretty easy to implement. So the first element, the letter L, stands for links. Now, your links should have appropriate display text. They should avoid click here, vague language, things like that, and avoid full HTML address in the text. Those are just some key principles. Now, we're going to talk about this more. The I stands for images. All of the images in your content should have accurate alternate text, and you should be considerate of color contrast when developing images. Structure stands for two separate things. I think it's because it wouldn't fit in the acronym nicely, but your documents should have headings applied. This gives a visual breakdown among the content, and it allows technology to skip to various parts of the content. And then the second item under structure are list elements. So we want to use unordered lists or ordered lists where important. These items are translated very particularly to assistive technology. And then finally, we want to be considerate of tables. Tables should have headers in them. They should not be used for layout purposes. And the major goal of a table is to display data. So if you're not displaying data, there's a good chance it doesn't need to be in a table. Now, you might be thinking, Sean, that's great. Where do we start? Well, we start by using the built-in rich content editor tools. Essentially, it's that top menu on your home tab within Word. That's where you're going to get most of our accessibility features for Word. So first up, today we're going to be talking about some specific elements, and the first one of that is links. Links should be descriptive and meaningful. If we were taking a quiz or reading some material, how do you guys feel about this link on the screen right now? Do you have any idea where it's going? Probably not. Not only that, but it's long. And for a screen reader, it's going to read every character. So it will attempt to make words out of any words that it finds, but some of the dots that you see, it will read that as period, period, period out loud. Or you can format it properly and use clear, concise text describing where the user is going to be going and what they're going to be reading about. And so in the second example here, we can see Bloom's taxonomy is underlined and it is a hyperlink. It's very clear of where we are going. And the hyperlink is woven into a sentence to provide context and directions. It looks cleaner visually, and it's important to remember you are the designer. So if you are creating documents or you come across documents where you have the ability to edit, I highly recommend replacing all of your links to be clear and concise. Jennifer asked, can you say click here for Bloom's taxonomy? Why don't you like click here? I swear, Jennifer was not a plant. My next slide here talks about it a little bit. So to answer your question directly, Jennifer, the reason we don't say click here is because it's redundant information. When we have active links on a page, the only sole purpose of a link is to be clicked on or activated. Additionally, some people don't use a mouse. And so by using click here, it's sort of a generalization that someone has access to a mouse, whereas certain assistive technology, they would simply activate the link. And then further, it is redundancy. And one thing that happens with a screen reader, we can pull up a list of links with a keystroke. And if all of them start with click here, it can be very confusing, and it just adds extra like word vomit, kind of how I talk, ramble on about pieces. When you're trying to get to a specific place though, you want to be as clear, concise as possible. And so on the left-hand side of the slide, we have some unacceptable uses. Click here, more info, read more, here and here. Now imagine just seeing the blue underlined text. That's all I would see if I was using a screen reader pulling up a links list. It would say just those words, click here, more info. I would have no idea what that meant because there's no context. However, on the right-hand side, we have appropriate use of links where we have debunking the myth of voter fraud or academic integrity policy. If I had seen those in my links list, it would be very clear to me my destination and what content I could expect after clicking on the link. Furthermore, just one final note, there are a set of standards from Section 508 and WCAG. That's not the purpose of this training, but the click here language is also a failure on some of those most common standards for accessibility. taxonomy. Why don't you like click here? What about helping those who are not visually impaired know what they should be doing? Basically, the click here is redundant. We already know it's a link because it's a hyperlink. We have another question. When the screen reader comes upon these links, how do they know that it is a link that will take them somewhere else? So in the wild, when we are using a screen reader, what happens is typically the object of reference is read first and then the text. And so an example like this would be, it would say, which examples are helpful? Unacceptable. Link. Click here to read the article. Link. I messed up the link part at the very end, but basically it announces the object. Similarly, it does that for headings, images, figures, which is the same idea as to why we don't apply image of or picture of in alternate text. We already know that it is an image. Does that help? If we have enough time, I'm happy to show you what JAWS sounds like activating some of these elements. I do have it on my computer. It's not technically a part of the presentation. However, I'm happy to share. Okay, and we're going to demo some of this stuff, so don't you worry. We're going to get some practice in as well. So to add a link in Word, I like to include the directions, and I can add my presentation to our practice files. I forgot to do that, so you all can have access to it. With that said, this is how you add links in Word. The first step is to select the text you would like to make a link. You can right-click that section or Control-K or Command-K if you're on Mac. Then select link, and then you fill out the address. I have an image here on the screen that kind of details the steps a little bit, and we're going to practice, so don't you worry. Finally, we have list elements. Now, the list elements are pretty particular. Essentially, this is how you need to use lists. If the order is not important, you want to use what's called a bulleted list or an unordered list. Essentially, it doesn't matter how we do things. So an example I like to use is going to the grocery store. You need to get bread and eggs, but it doesn't matter what order you add them to your cart. The order does matter in terms of you need to get to the store first. So that would be like a 1. And then you put groceries in your cart. That would be a step 2. For ordered lists, the order or the sequence is important. You often see this in science-based courses or, signing up for an email list, right? You must first go to a website. Second, you would enter your email. And third, you would receive those emails. You couldn't do any one of those steps out of order, or else the process wouldn't work. And so there's a little pop quiz here. I have 2 options on the screen, option A and option B. One of these uses lists correctly, the other does not. So in the chat, please provide a response, either option A or option B, for which is using the correct usage of lists. You guys are good, correct? Good work. I'm going to assume it's obvious because of all your responses. I didn't get a single A, so I will move on. Here's another one. I actually didn't address this, but just to gauge where we're at, out of option A and option B, what is the correct usage of lists? And I know I didn't reference this, but it's okay. It's going to get your brain thinking. Oh, we got crickets. Everyone's thinking. Okay, I'll give you the answer. You guys drive a hard bargain. Yeah, B. First few people said B. Sorry, Brandy, it is not A. Now here's why. Essentially, it's a grammar rule, I believe. Lists need more than one item. So if your list only contains one item, don't put it into a bulleted list. And if you'll notice, our links actually fail too, but that's okay. Now to add a list in Word, it's very straightforward. You select a list and then you select either bulleted or numbered list, and that will apply your bullets. Or you can select the option first, begin typing, simply hit the enter key and it will continue your list. Lists are the easy one. That's why we do it on day one. Okay, so we're going to do a breakout session here in a moment, but first I want to show you how to do some of this stuff. I'm going to stop my screen share. Before I jump into a little demo here, does anyone have any questions for me about anything we've gone over? I am going to specifically show you links and lists in a practice document. Jennifer says, but when you're discussing something in class, it often helps to have a number associated with something on the list, like a study guide, so that people can say, I have a question about number 8.
Do you want me just to talk? Would that be easier?
Yeah, that would totally be easier.
So sorry. Yeah, so I mean, I totally get it from the perspective of somebody with a screen reader. I'm thinking about it pedagogically for people that aren't using screen readers. So having, in that previous example, having the URL as a separate bullet, it made it easier for the students' eyes to get drawn onto what was important. And in terms of having a list, I get that you want it to be, if the sequence doesn't matter, it shouldn't be numbered. So I'm thinking about my study guide, and in a sense, the sequence doesn't matter. So it would all be bullets. But then if I'm having a class discussion and we're talking, I have a question about, the 18th thing on the study guide, if it's the 18th number, we can all tell quickly which one it is. If it's the 18th bullet, people are counting the bullets, trying to figure it out. So I'm trying to figure out how you balance both kinds of students' needs.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so the concern you have is the same that a person using a screen reader is going to have. So if you're referencing the 18th bullet, a person using a screen reader is going to have no idea what the 18th bullet is unless it's in a proper list. One thing that I can think of off the top of my head is to assign headings. That would be a way that you could chunk the content out to say, like, in this section or on this page, you can reference different aspects of the content. Similarly, if you're doing like a lecture or something, it's going to be different anyways, where a person using a screen reader would be able to search the document perhaps to find that area. But in terms of like what we consider the standards and accessibility guidelines and best practices, essentially it's kind of what I said. In terms of labeling, that is something you can definitely explore. It would be interesting to maybe see an example of a document where that happens. I know what you're saying, but I'm having a hard time visualizing exactly what that would look like. In my head, it would be very simple to just apply a heading to an element right before it. And so you would reference like on page 9 under the heading level, whatever it may be. But that's a fair point. I hear what you're saying in terms of the best practice, though, where my hands are tied. I hope that's an okay explanation there.
Oh, I understand. Thanks.
Okay, so let's look at one of these here. Let me move my floating head. I just want to verify, Betsy, can you see my Microsoft Word document?
Yes, I can.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so today our focus, or right now our focus is on links and lists. So there are other accessibility errors in here. However, I'm not currently going to address them. that is going to be something we work on over the next couple sessions. So we're going to jump right in and figure out how to fix these links. Now, the very first error that I see is this content here, where we have a live HTTPS link on the page. Now, I always hesitate to tell participants this. There's one gray area with this rule. Back in the day when hybrid classes were just starting and there was truly an emphasis on using online support to an on-grounds class, you would possibly have this link text in there so students who printed the document would be able to access the link. This is the only exception that really exists. And there's a couple different ways to do it. And I'm just going to give you the answer. Basically, what I would do is I would remove the hyperlink from this text. And it appears to actually not be live text anyways. So we would just remove that underline and change it to our black font. And then it could be printed. So this removes the redundancy from a person using a screen reader, but allows a printed version to still visually see that element. That is one of the only exceptions. So outside that, let's pretend that we're just going to fix it. So what I'm going to do is essentially cut the link out. But before I do that, we need to determine where it's going to go. And so let's see, it's talking about Vesuvius. So what we're going to do, based on our content underneath, Mount Etna has the live link. I'm going to simply take my link text, my hyperlink here, and I'm going to cut it out. And it leaves this extra information that I will delete. And what I'm going to do is place it on this text, Mount Vesuvius, which I'm sure I'm saying incorrectly. Now, there's a couple different ways we could add this link. I could do Control K on my keyboard to bring up the link menu. And I would paste my address in here, Control V. Or another method we could do is to right click our highlighted text, go down to the link button, and then in the address window, I would select paste. Now there's two areas here that matter. The text to display, this is our on-screen text. This is where we want to avoid using click here. And then our address, this is our destination of the link. And then we select OK. Typically, Word will update the color and make it a live link. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but it appears to have gone through smoothly here. So let's do another one. By the way, this is meant to be a live document where it's not perfect. So you may have questions. Depending on the presentation, I may do things slightly different depending on the questions I get. So with that said, we're just quickly browsing to see if there are any other errors. Now, we already fixed the HTTPS example. Let's see if I can find another link error. We have another full hyperlink. Let's see if we have any click here's. I may have removed them. Let's see. Okay, that's all right. We will do another full hyperlink. So Long Valley, California, we're going to simply take this hyperlink and I will Control X. That is a shortcut for cut. You could also right click cut. And then I am going to select my text here. I had it and I lost it. And then we can do our right click link and right click paste in our address and select OK. We now have a couple of good hyperlinks. So that's hyperlinks. I'm going to have you guys practice this in a moment. Next up is lists. I want to show you how to format list elements. Now, this is pretty straightforward. Jennifer, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I feel like I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm just trying to understand. So it feels like there are some links where it's like, this is where my source of information is. Hey, student, if you want to read more, here's where you can read more if you want to, opposed to an instructor telling the student, you need to go to this website, you need to read this, this is your homework. So, I mean, I guess you could, so then you just say for homework, go to this site, or no, you can't say that.
You can say that.
You can say that?
It's
but
literally,
just don't say click here.
It's the click here.
Really? Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes practice, especially if you've done it, like if you've been teaching online for a long time, or what, if you've just done it the same way for a long time. I understand this is what you're feeling is completely normal. And I want to get you to think about when you throw in those links in there. And it's great you're asking a lot of questions that I appreciate it. So yeah, it's really the click here thing, and vague information. Like I once got a document that simply had link. So they would say, you know, review this link for more info, right? And this is just useless information for a screen reader. It's no context whatsoever. And I've seen entire documents with hundreds of those. And that's another example in the click here category. Like you don't want to use that word either. Be descriptive. Tell your user where they're going in as few words as possible.
So review this for more info?
No, I wouldn't use that at all. So if this was, that whole sentence is junk. Here's a better example. Let's keep the theme of accessibility. So I would say, review the accessibility guidelines for more information, right? And then I would link accessibility guidelines. And obviously I just threw in a bogus link, but this whole line right here is useless information to me. Review this link for more info means nothing. You really want to wrap your link in meaningful text. And so this line here not only prompts the user, whether they are cited or not, for a specific cue, and then in addition to that, it gives a person using a screen reader the ability to know where they're going. Okay, lists. So there are interpretations of lists. You don't have to do it the same way I'm going to show you. In this particular example document, we did intend users to make this top content a list. It used to be several pages long, so it was a different thing. However, now we're gonna just say this needs to be a list. So these three elements here, I'm going to select all of my text that I want in the list. And then under the paragraph tab on the home ribbon, I'm going to select bullets. And essentially it applies the bulleted list. You can change the way they look. It's always best practice. Keep it simple. Don't get fancy if you don't have to. And then I personally don't like the blank lines. Oftentimes, when I highlight my text here, you see how it grabs that gray. A screen reader is going to read that as blank. It'll say blank out loud. So I like to delete those out. You don't have to, though. It's not a hard rule on that, more of a usability thing. And then, yeah, you can kind of choose where you want to apply your lists. We threw in some loops in here for you to try to find. So what we're going to do is you guys are going to practice this. I have posted some practice documents on the Accessibility Center website. I'm going to drop this link in the chat and walk you through how to download the practice files. So please click on that link in the chat. it will take you to the Accessibility Center resource page. And let's kind of walk through it. So once you click on that link, you're going to scroll all the way to the very bottom. And I have a heading here called Microsoft Word Accessibility, Yuba Woodland Hills, MS Word Practice Documents. This is the file you should be downloading. When it opens up in this window, you can select the little download button in the top right corner. That will queue the file to download to your computer. From here, it is a zip file. You must right-click the file and select Extract All. So we're going to take a moment here for everyone to get the files that they need. One more time, we are going to go to the link I provided in the chat. It will take you to this resource presentation page. You're going to scroll all the way to the very bottom and select MS Word Practice Documents. Jennifer, you have a question? Or your hand is up anyways.
Is there a different Jennifer? It's not me.
Oh, okay. All right, how is everyone doing? Were you able to get those files downloaded to your computer? In the chat, let me know. Yes, yes, perfect. Excellent. Sorry about that. I had too many windows open. I couldn't quite see it there. All right. You know, there's only 30 of us in here. I'm not sure we need to do a breakout room, to be perfectly honest. So what I would like for all of you to do is open up the file 00 inaccessible volcano. This is the same document that I was just showing a demo for. It's called 00 inaccessible volcano. I would like for you guys to take the next 15 minutes and try your best to format the links and comb the document for any list elements that need to be applied. If you have any questions, you can ask myself, Betsy, Candice, or Mariana a question in the chat, and we will be happy to help you out. Ready, set, go. And this practice will be for the next 15 minutes. So at 3:25, we will reconvene. Okay, I have got a couple questions about where the file is. I'm going to quickly run through one more time where to download the file. First of all, I'm going to post the link in the chat once more. Once you select that link, you will scroll all the way to the very bottom of the page. And under Microsoft Word Accessibility, Yuba Woodland, no hills, that is where I am from, my apologies. You will simply select the link and it will open, it will either open or download immediately. You'll need to download the files and they should pop up on a little window within your browser. You will then right click the zip file. You can do extract. And then we are working on 00 inaccessible volcano. And your goal is to attempt fixing the links in this document and applying any list elements throughout the 5 pages. How is everyone doing? Are we making good progress? I'm going to go ahead and do just a couple more on my screen while everyone is finishing up. Betsy, can you see my Word document? Just verifying.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm trying to talk lower so I don't distract all of you. You're welcome to turn your volume down if I'm annoying, but turn it back on. Okay, we're gonna fix a couple more of these. Let's see, we got a live link here. There are some sections in this text that appear to be a link, but it's actually not, and that was on purpose. So you'll want to hover your mouse over just to verify that there is an active link on the text. I'm going to edit my text to display on this one. I like that. We'll select OK. Let's see, we're looking for lists and links. Those look pretty good to me. Under fun facts, this doesn't have to be a list, but it kind of feels like it could be. I'm going to go ahead and throw it into a list item. Under did you know, we only have one element. Because of that, I'm going to remove the list element. So it's simply going to be a sentence. Tomorrow we'll learn, not tomorrow, the next session we'll learn about applying headings to our document. Let's see, volcano alert system. I don't see any links there. That's good. Table. All right, we're looking for lists and links. So here is another one that doesn't quite have descriptive text. Let me check the chat. Hold on one moment. Oh, good. You guys are following along. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, we're going to talk about tables and headings on our next session. I don't want to overwhelm anyone, so we're purely focusing on links and list elements. Carmelo, you are correct. Today we're not covering color contrast, but you're right. Yeah, that yellow is terrible. You're ahead of the curve. By the way, never mind. Let's fix some more of these links. So we have Meso 1991. I just want to edit this link. I feel like 1991 doesn't give me enough description. So I'm going to edit my hyperlink and I'm going to update the text to display. And I will say Meso 1991. And then I can come back and delete the non-link text. Right click, edit hyperlink. And this one will be Ramos. And we will delete that. And then finally, we have another live link here. I'm wondering if this is the same as this Meso one. Let's just look. We've got, it ends in TA-Meso.
Well, Sean, you have a question here. Could you, they missed how you changed you edited the hyperlink.
Yeah. No problem. So basically, there's two ways to do it. You can either select the text or you can click into the link, the live link. Then you right click and select edit hyperlink. If this wasn't a live link, you would see the word link down here. But because it's already activated, we would simply select edit hyperlink. And then what I did was I added the word Ramos to the text to display area on my page. Now, I could have done that several different other ways, but to me, this is very clear. I select OK, and then I deleted the word Ramos as it was there twice. Now, I believe this link is a duplication of this Meso 1991. So I'm actually just going to delete it out. Well, let me check. Yeah, this is actually linking to my desktop. So I'm going to instead cut it. And then we're going to edit this hyperlink and paste it in the address. Looks like I got a little bug here. Hold on, I messed something up. Let's try that again. We're going to copy it this time. Let's edit our hyperlink. Change our address. It seems to be a little glitch there, updating our text to display. Let's see if this works. Okay, visually it looks like it. We're just going to verify by, did not mean to do that. Verify it's live. Yeah, okay, it's fixed now. Okay, next up, it looks like we have a list element here.
Sean.
Yes.
Hey, Sean, can we go back to that? Because I actually looked at those.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why. So mine was different. The Meso 1991 was different from the extra link at the end. It was a different web page.
Okay.
But the question that was actually a different question. The question that I had, so like if you click on the Ramos, which it's supposed to be 2002, I think, instead of 2200. But if you click on that and go to the link, it takes you to the references page of a paper.
Mm-hmm.
Which I mean, it should really take you to the actual reference itself.
Totally. Yeah.
So
keep in mind,
went through and fixed that.
That's fantastic. And I would say above and beyond. And I just want you to know this is a practice document and some of the links are just completely bogus. But I appreciate your keen eye to that. And you are correct.
So my question was just like, you shouldn't do that, right? You wouldn't ever want to have it just go to a reference page where you could add where they could choose to click. You would want to have it go directly to the reference, right?
Yeah, if possible. There's a layer of usability to all of this where you kind of have to make a judgment call. So the fact that there is a link is a step up, right? It's good to provide references to our content. But as you'll see here, what happens with third-party links that is not a part of the session, the web page we sent them to is not accessible. So in theory, it creates a lot of other issues. So it's definitely something to be aware of. And again, the fact that you've even thought that far into it, yes, you should be as detailed and direct as possible. This practice document was developed by several people, and it was sort of a smorgasbord of links, and some of them might be completely irrelevant to what the actual link is supposed to go to, as it's just for demonstration. But you're spot on. Good work in finding that. Okay, let's fix this list item. I'm on page 6. So I see a letter A and a letter B followed by a couple images. This is what we're going to do. Because we have descriptions referencing the specific image, I want to keep it as a letter A. Now to do this, I'm going to highlight the text without grabbing the images. There's an old trick. You can hold the shift key and use the arrows on your keyboard to accurately grab text. However, it's still taking my images. That's all right. We're in the wild here. Let's just go with it. I'm going to go to my numbered list and select the lowercase ABC. Now, sometimes what happens, the formatting just gets a little wonky. And this is just an experience thing. I'm going to walk you through how I would fix this. I'm going to go to the end of the first list item, and I'm going to select the Enter key on my keyboard. And it pulls up the list item B. Let's do it again. I just want to see the structure of my document. Okay, what this tells me is my images are not formatted properly. Now, the next part of the lecture is actually images, and it looks like we're about time. So this is a semi-good segue. There's a couple things happening here. There is an accessibility rule that says images should be marked in line with text. What that means is the image should follow text and not break text. Because what happens is sometimes if I were to move my image as I am on the screen right now, and it breaks my font, it breaks the words into two separate areas, this can be very confusing for a screen reader. Some screen readers might read part of the left section first and then the right. It just makes it confusing. So we have a specific setting that avoids all of this. If you select your image, there is a picture layout. And in here, there's a lot of options. For accessibility, it is best practice to do inline with text. And what this does is it kind of chunks our content a little different. Now, this isn't a good placement of this image. I'm going to simply drag it below just to get it out of the way for now. And then we're going to edit our next bullet point. So we've got A in there. Let's go down here and grab our B. My wheel scroll does not seem to be working correctly. My apologies. I'm going to simply cut this text. This is bullet point B. I'm going to go back up to my list elements. Someone asked me if this meeting is going to be recorded. Yes, it should be. You can reach out to Betsy and she will have more information for you. Thank you. Okay, so at the end of my list element, I'm going to select the Enter key, which queues up the letter B, and I'm going to do Control V or right click paste to get the content in there. And it still broke it a little bit. That's okay. We are in the wild here. So let's fix this other image and get it out of the way. So I'm going to select the image under layout options. I'm going to select inline with text. And then we want to get it out of the way just so we can finish our fixing our list element. It still didn't quite fix. So by backspacing, I'm removing some of the formatting. And when I hit enter at the end of the other bullet, it properly assigned the bullet. Now we have a little cleanup to do. It seems like it added an extra list item. That happens. And also our images are out of place now. That's okay. I'm going to shrink them just a little bit. See if we can't get these guys on the same page. And then I'm going to reverse them. Now, I did that by simply grabbing the image with my mouse and moving my cursor to where I wanted it to go. And we now have a properly formatted list, A and B, with our images in here. Now we need to ensure these images have good alt text, but that's the next part of the presentation. We have one more list down here. I'm going to simply make sure our images are in line first, and they are. That's good. Our element is in a list elements. Is B in a list element? It is. So this is an example, if I can get my windows correct, where we have the images actually a part of the list. You can do that. For consistency, though, I'm going to move these images like I did the other area. So what I'm going to do is drag my image below the second bullet point. And I'm going to do the same for this other one. I'm simply grabbing the image and dragging it. I can use my arrow key to navigate a little. So I'm using my left arrow key to get my cursor right to the left. That's not a good description. I'm moving my cursor directly to the left of the image. When I hit the enter key, it moved our words over here, and it likes to think I'm making a list. I'm going to backspace once. So this is a little past the scope of this presentation, but I'm giving you what I would do if I came across this in the wild. We're going to delete some of this blank space. Make sure our images are in the correct order. And there we go. So it now properly flows. We've got our list elements followed by our images that are in line with text. Okay, I know that was a lot. The purpose of that was to show you lists and links. And just really quick, I saw these in the corner of my eye. These dashes are not recognized as lists. So you need to make sure you actually use the built-in formatting. Now, it applied dashes as a list element, which is okay. However, to be consistent, I'm going to change it to an actual bullet point. And that's how you do links and lists.
Sean, there's a question about images. Jennifer's asking, is there an image size we should know?
Not in particular. I'm just particular. I like doing things a certain way. Sometimes when the images flood onto other pages, it can be distracting, but there's no rule to it. You can make these as big or as small as you want. You can make them full page images. Just be careful of your pixelation. You want to make sure your pictures are crisp. As long as you have it set to inline with text, that'll do. Okay, moving on. Let me hold on one moment. I got to change things up here. How's everyone feeling? You guys doing okay? Are you ready for me to move on? Any final questions about links or lists? Now's the time. Otherwise, I will move on. Let me move our floating heads. All right. I appreciate you all hanging on there with me. I know that was a lot. Okay. Next up is images. This is my favorite section. We got something in the chat. Let me check that real quick. Or Betsy, is that a question? I can't quite see.
Yeah, it's Ruth says her question is the diagram of the volcano. Should we have written information about what it portrayed?
Not at this time. That's a good question, and we will practice that coming up shortly. But first, I need to explain to you how to do that. So our next element in our list acronym is images. Knowing what you know now, and it's okay if you don't know the answer to this. This is not a graded pop quiz. I would like for you to take a moment and answer this. So how does a screen reader interpret the image? We have an apple in the top right screen. Our alt text for this image is currently set to red and yellow apple picture. What do you think the screen reader is going to say aloud? Either option A, B, or C. I seem to have lost my chat. Betsy, if you don't mind reading out some responses as they come in.
You got a B and a lot of C's.
B's and a lot of C's. Okay, so what the screen reader will actually say. 1A, okay, perfect. We want it to say A. However, what it's going to actually read in its current state is it's going to be C. It's going to say picture of red and yellow apple picture. That's part of the redundancy thing that we try to address. It's kind of similar with the click here stuff. With images, it's more prominent. So there's a rule: do not say image of or picture of unless it's relevant to the instruction. Now you might be thinking, what does that mean? Well, let's explain. So think about the intention of your images. Why are we using them? How does it relate to the content? Remember, you are the author. So it's up to you to help your students understand the significance of these images and how they tie to the story you might be trying to tell. I would like for you in the chat to write a brief alternate text for this image. So knowing no other information, how would you describe this image in a sentence or two? And if you wouldn't mind throwing that in the chat, please. I was able to get my chat back up, Betsy, so I should be able to read these. Thank you for that. Alice in Wonderland having tea. A little girl sits at a table set for tea with a bunny, a dormouse, and a man wearing a large hat. Alice in Wonderland tea party, a very happy on birthday to you. Yeah, that's pretty good. Annabelle said, picture of Alice in Wonderland tea time picture. That feels a little redundant to me. The goal of this exercise is to tell me what you think it should be. So we want to avoid using picture of. I suppose unless you think it's relevant. Let's find out. I flipped it on you. So what if we changed it to be writing alt text for an art class, studying drawing techniques? So what you gave was fair. There's nothing wrong with the descriptions you gave me other than the picture of one, Annabelle. But other than that, they were fairly accurate. So for this particular example, we changed the context. So because it's a complex image, we not only included the description on the Microsoft Word page, but our alt text is very clear and defined. So let me try to explain this in another way. The alt text should be concise. Think of it if you were flipping through magazines, right? Looking for something to read and an image jumped out at you and you were like, I want more, right? I want to read the article. For me, it would be like a wood oven and they're cooking pizza, right? Handmade bread. And I would immediately, I'm hungry, can you tell? I would immediately maybe want to read more about that, or where can I order it, right? And so the alt text should be the equivalent of that experience. We want to give just enough information that it conveys the importance, but there's no funny business. There's nothing else in it. So in this example, our alt text is Sir John Tenniel's illustration, Mad Hatter's Tea Party, using line drawing. It gives us all the context we need. Now, in the Word document itself, or in the Canvas page, this isn't a Canvas training, however, it kind of applies. What you would do is you would explain it further. You would add additional details that you saw fit. So on the Word document itself, I would add Sir John Tenniel, the illustrator of Alice in Wonderland, used a technique called line drawing that used curved lines to add dimension and depth to his artwork. Now you might be thinking, why don't you just add that in the alt text? Well, there's sort of a reverse accessibility thing. Not everybody accesses alt text. So using this technique, we are making our content the most usable for the most amount of people possible. Were there any questions or anything, Betsy, in the chat?
Sean, I have a question. So if this is, let's say, like a complex, like a map or something, right? And so you want to keep your alt text succinct, like you're saying, but then have a larger text description for those students who can't see the map of what's going on in it, right?
And that's a good segue. So maps are complex. There's no easy way around it. This slide's not important at this time. So I have a slide here I developed for another college a while back, and I decided to include it in this because I think it's important. There are considerations for graphs, charts, maps specifically are one of the most complex things to provide alternate text for. Basically, graphs and charts are inherently inaccessible. If you use PowerPoint or Word to create a pie chart or a bar chart, it will not work with a screen reader. I hope that changes one day. It is what it is. You also don't want to have pictures of heavy textualized images, like you don't want to have a screenshot of a web page that is full of text, right? You would want that live text to be accessible. Basically, the way to fix this in this specific example is to provide a data table underneath. So I have an example here. This is a pie chart where we asked participants what they thought the reasons for inaccessibility is. This is just a made up graphic, okay? Now, the way to make this accessible, we want to have a alternate text set for the image, but it would be something very clear, like reasons for inaccessibility, and we might list out the responses, or we would capture the essence of the image. I always explain alt text like, if I was explaining it to my father over the phone who has no idea what I'm talking about, what would I tell him I'm looking at, right? You know, there was a survey and most of the people said they don't understand web accessibility. So you would put that in the alt text. And then the actual accessibility of this item would be like this, where on the screen, I have a table of the response, the number of responses, and the percentages. And if this table is accessible, a person using a screen reader will have no trouble navigating the different contents. Furthermore, we have math. Now, I am running a little bit out of time, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I wanted to give an example for any of you that are in math or anything like that. I often hear, but Sean, I can't write alt text for that, or it gives away the answer. There's a lot of reasons people feel like they can't write detailed alt text. And I would like to challenge you to reconsider. Think about what you're asking your students to provide. Think about the student learning outcomes. How can you address them in a way that is both accessible for all students and gets to the learning objectives? So for this image, this is the alt text I would write. Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I did not write this. I am not a math guy. I found it and it was a good resource. Essentially, what's happening though, we explain what's going on. So we would say a line graph shows the x-axis is labeled volume in cubic centimeters, yada, yada, yada. We give the 5 points plotted on the line and where any of the extra pieces are. This is a very complex graphic. In our volcano document, part of our demo is for you to actually go in and update the alt text for all of the images. And the goal is to capture the essence. So what you feel is important, that should be the alt text. We have another little breakout session. This is the last piece of our training today. So let's take a look at our Word document.
Oh, Sean, before you go on, Jenny
Yes.
has been waiting really patiently. She said she has a question.
My apologies, by all means.
No, I mean, and I don't know that it's super urgent, and this part might answer it. It's for me doing like geology volcano labs, and it's describing it without giving the answer, right? So if you have that lava flow and you want to ask the students, are you looking at a picture of a lava flow or a pyroclastic eruption? In the description of it, right? I mean, can I just say figure 1, or can you assume that if they can't see, they can't? I mean, yeah, help me.
Yep, you're perfect. So there is a level of accessibility that we have. And then there's what's accommodation. Do I have any folks from disabled students program? I'm not sure what it's called at your campus. Anyways, the major difference is the description might change based on accommodation down the line. So if I was fully blind, enrolled in a geology class, you would know. I would talk to my department. We would get in contact with them immediately to find out accommodations. Here's what typically happens. We would send these images out to be made as tactile graphics. There's a couple different things you can do. It's not very expensive, where you would get a printout of this graphic on raised paper, and perhaps we would change our elements to include different textures on the touch. That would be an accommodation that we would provide. Now, in terms of the alt text and giving away the answer, it's very challenging. and I understand any frustration you guys feel when I mention it. I have worked with several faculty members in developing different assignments based on what we're trying to get, right? If your goal is to determine whether or not a student understands lava flow, right? Doing it with graphics probably isn't very efficient. You would need to get that information from the student in another way. And so if I was a disability employee, right, contacting you in regards to the accommodation of the student, I might ask you, how else could we get the student this information? And I realize that's a big ask. Geology is a tough subject. It's even tougher for those with visual impairments. And there are many, not many, there are some geologists who are blind, medical doctors who are blind. So a lot of it is how we structure that content. In terms of giving away, go ahead.
Absolutely. I think that, you know, if they're completely visually impaired, then having the tactile thing works. But then if they're not that, maybe I don't understand what's the other group of people that would need the alt text if they're not that visually impaired, they can't make use of the picture. Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
So
it might not be any other group, but
okay.
like it, I don't mean this in a rude way. The law is what the law is. And so even one blind student is enough to cause the, you know, reformatting of an entire course. Typically any litigation that happens at any college, they look at the entire district budget financially and they're like, you're telling us, you know, your district has how much in revenue or whatever, and you couldn't make this course accessible. That's essentially how the courts view it. So that's kind of nonsense, but who would use it? Mainly people with screen readers. And so the purpose of this is to help raise that bottom bar. What you don't want to happen is next semester you have 2 or 3 blind individuals enroll in your course and you're not ready. That's going to be a major issue. Whereas with something like this, you could simply rewrite the alternate text in a way that doesn't rely on giving away the answer. I am running out of time, but I can get you some better specific examples of that. And essentially, it just causes the instructor to do, for lack of a better word, it's more work, especially if you have existing courses. But it is an important aspect to the accessibility standards that exist. Good question. I love it. I could give you more examples of crazy stuff I've worked on too. This is actually a common one: chemistry, nursing, firefighting. There's so many that rely on things like this. And what we're trying to do is provide that baseline, and then we follow up with accommodation to anything that's past that. Okay, with that said, how do we add alt text? So we're not going to start on this really intense one first. We're gonna come up here to a little more fun one, right? Fun as in it's a little more simple. First, I want to visually kind of look around the image to see if there's any alt text that I can grab. And I see some down here at the bottom. We have a fissure vent opened on Hawaii's Kilauea volcano. There's a couple different things we can do here. Let's first open up our alt text options. We're going to select the image with our left click. We are going to right click the image and select edit alt text. Now, depending on the version of Word you have, you're going to get this window called alt text. If your version of Word has a title box above it, you want to leave it blank. The newest version of Word does not have it, as it doesn't do anything. So your alt text should be in the description box. Now, for this example, I could mark as decorative, but that's no fun. That's too easy. That's an easy out. What I'm going to do instead, I'm going to take this little snippet down here. I'm going to Control Exit to cut, select my image once more, Control V to paste. And that removed it from the text and added it to the alt text. So there's no duplication there. If you wanted to have it in both places, I encourage you to write a more detailed description for the on-page text. That's perfect, Betsy. And guess who wrote that whole page? this guy. Just kidding. I found the resources for it.
Great.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one, thank you for that. That's a perfect segue. There's many more examples. And then in the resources for that section, there are even more examples. Okay, we have just a few minutes left. My apologies, I overtalked. Take a couple minutes and I would like for you to practice adding in what you think the alt text should be for some of these images. Don't get hung up on the complexity. I'm more interested in you learning on how to add the alt text and avoiding picture of, image of. Try to be as detailed as possible. Ready, set, go.
Hey, Sean, while people are working on that, can I ask you a quick question about images?
Sure.
So when you have the image reference underneath it that says like, whatever, by unknown author, copyright CCB, whatever. Like that always feels weird to me because then the screen reader is going to read all that. Is there a better way to put the reference in a different place? So for one of my classes, I had all of my image references like at the end so that people could, if they were interested in what the reference is, they can go look at it, but then it's not like muddying up stuff right under the image. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. You could do that. There's not a wrong way in what you've described, the scenario. You can do either. It's tricky, not being redundant. It's very hard, especially for designing with people who are using screen readers. One thing I would like to note, people who use screen readers, they don't read the standard way we do. So how I'm kind of scrolling up and down and starting on page 1 before moving to page 2, that's because I'm sighted. Someone who's visually impaired, they're not going to review a document the same way. So they're not going to sit there and read the 4 pages, they're going to jump to their keystrokes on the keyboard. And typically that includes pulling up a list of headings to determine which content they want to read, or a list of links, or they can jump immediately to any tables using a single keystroke. And so while you may feel it's maybe redundant, it might actually be better to have it tied to that image. Additionally, Word does have the ability to add a caption feature. If you right click your image, there's a spot for insert caption. That might be an alternative. However, if you're taking it to PDF, there might be some extra considerations. I would say you can do either. There's not a rule against it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Good question. So we have just a few minutes left. Does anyone have any final questions? I hope I didn't talk you all to death.
Hey, Sean, there was a question earlier from Claudia. She said, Canvas gives you a limit in the number of words that you can use. Long descriptions should have a link to a page. Does Word require the same?
That's a great point. Good question. Yes. So part of why we keep the alt text short and concise is so not only your authoring environment has those limitations, but screen readers also do too. And they'll often only read X amount of characters. And so what we found is best practice, it's 140 characters or less. It's a tweet or less. And so when you have more than that, it's better to include that information around the image. And that's where, for example, with the complex, the lava flow, right? Which direction or what parts, that's where you would describe it on the page versus the small segment for the alt text. So the answer is yes. There's also a limitation in Word. It's just one of those things that people don't talk about. Like you can put in a whole book, I think. I've never tried. I've never maxed it out and counted. But yeah, it's important to be short and concise in that alt text box. Ruth asks, when we put the alt text in, do we need to click something to make sure it sticks? Or when we close it? yeah, it's weird. You just can move on and it should save it. I've had some issues with it occasionally, but lately it's been working pretty good, Ruth. So yeah, you can just navigate away from that element.
Sean, I have a follow-up to that great question about the length of your alt text. So
Mhm.
if you're just going to describe it within your page, in the alt text, do you need to say like described in page?
You don't have to. There's not a rule against it. I have seen it where like how you mentioned the reference page for your images at the end of the document. I've seen that exact scenario. And for the alt text, they would say detailed description under like figure 1.2. And so on the reference page, it was labeled appropriately for where the images were in the document, and then the alt text referenced it. But if you're putting a full description where I didn't need to see the image at all, you can actually just mark it decorative, and that might be easier. Great questions.
Cool, thank you.
And no worries, Tara, I understand we're technically out of time. My apologies for talking your head off all day. Thank you all for being here today. Betsy, I'm not sure if you have any last information for your people.
Oh, yeah, well, just thank you so much, Sean. We're really honored, and there's a lot of information to deliver, so we understand the detail. We really appreciate the detail. And I just want to remind you that we have 2 more weeks of this, and we're going to be building each week on your skill set. So by the end of the month, you're going to be mini Sean's, right? We thank
I
you.
love
And
it.
I will have these videos posted for you by Monday. I'll be captioning my fingers off to get them out to you. So thank you.
I wanted to add one final thing for those of you who are still here. The next sessions do build on this document. If you want to take the first 3 documents, it's 01, 02, and 03. You don't have to, but you're more than welcome to apply links and list elements. If you're feeling inspired, feel free to do a little bit more. Our next session, we will talk about headers and tables heavily. And then we will kind of do some heavy practice on all of these elements on those practice documents that I referenced. So if you want to get ahead of the curve, that's what you could do. And you're welcome, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.